What's up, everybody? Thanks for coming back and visiting the channel, the Worldwide Web of Lending. I'm Joe Webb, your host, and I've got some really cool information for you guys today. Today's episode is going to be something really cool. It's about negotiating the deal and what the lender-agent advantage is to you, the consumer, and I hope you learned some things today. So I got a buddy coming in that I've known for a real long time, about 20 years. I had a chance to meet my man Andrew before he got into the career. I've seen him grow as a man, and I've seen him grow as a professional. He's now growing his family, and it's going to be some super cool stuff. So let's have a lot of fun today. What's up, Andrew? Thanks for coming today, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I'm super excited to have you here. We got a cool topic about negotiating the deal, which you're real good at. I've
really
seen you in action.
about it.
We're going to have our audience learn something today. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I'm Andrew Johns, real estate agent. Been practicing real estate here in Maryland now for 16 years. Started off as a sole agent, took that line and transferred into a team. Now we're really scaling the team. We have 5 agents on our team. We have 2 administrative staff members, and we're looking to scale that team. We really enjoy serving our community, and here we are today at
Jerusalem Mill. Yeah, this is a really cool historic place in the state of Maryland. If anybody goes online and searches like historic locations in Maryland, this is probably top 5. So you'll see some cool areas today. Hope you enjoy the scenery. Cool, man. Let's get started.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Let's start diving in. So what you and I were talking about, let's get into the first idea that we had, that there has to exist this chemistry between the lending side of the business and the real estate side of the business. So question for you, man. For a consumer, why does there need to be chemistry?
There needs to be a benefit because the realtor and the lender need to be able to jive. You need to be able to have a conversation. You need to be able to get to the point, right? When you're in a multiple offer situation, time is important. So you want to make sure when you have that conversation with the lender, there is a trust, there's an accountability, there's a follow through, making sure like, hey, you call him, you text him, or you text him or her, that things are connected, right? It feels more balanced. It feels like you can count on them. I live a busy life. I live a busy schedule. I'm not just working one deal at a time. So, having that connection and conversation to feel confident about taking the step where I need to take it with that client or that lender, it's important because we're working in the best interest of the consumer.
Yeah.
And, by having someone that I can connect with, have the rapport with, that chemistry with, it allows those channels to be a lot more open. It allows me to, be able to talk more freely about, what is best for that client. And I can have that conversation with someone I haven't worked with before, but I can get to the point faster. And that's what I'm getting at.
So question for you, can you think of an example where you were working with a lender for the first time and you recognized the lack of chemistry?
Yeah, absolutely. So when that did happen, we weren't reciprocal for conversations when the time was needed. He'd be like, or she would be like, I'm busy. I'll get back to you later on. So, when I have a question, I want to be able to hit that question and move on. Because if not, that's halting me from carrying forward with my confidence to take care of that client. So I would say, time being the most valuable asset when you're working a transaction, and it may be a multiple offer situation or not.
Yeah. I
want to know that answer, and I want to hear from the tonality of that lender that they're giving me the right question, the right answer back to that question. And I spent a lot of time listening to making sure they're responding back based on my experience.
Totally.
So I had to take that path forward with them.
So there are going to be some people watching that have never bought a home before.
Yeah.
And when I say the phrase negotiating a deal, they might understand what that means, but they might not understand why it matters to have a lender and an agent as a part of that conversation. So to a first-time home buyer, what's the first thing you think of when I say having a lender-realtor advantage when you're negotiating?
Yeah, you got to match up the right type of financing. You have to understand the property.
Totally.
I always say, when you can match up the house and understand the financing, understand the buyer, when you bring those 3 together, you have a winning situation, right? Because there might be a unique play that you have on that particular property. It might require, some type of renovation. It might require you going with type of a stronger deposit or terms of your offer. So there's lots of layers to the offer. It's not just the price. It's not just when you settle. What are your time frames for your contingency periods are important. How much deposit are you putting down? And also, the lender is important too. Not only just the realtor, but also the reputation of working with that lender as well, or that realtor as well. Do you have a good name? Do you have a bad name in the market? And if you're working in a certain community, most people know each other.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but like bring in an example of sports. I mean, it's an easy metaphor for most situations. I coach youth football, and I've noticed in some transactions on my end where it's two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
You know, any joke in the NFL having a quarterback controversy, right? And one of the things that I think too is that there can't be a quarterback controversy. You're the one that has to go out into the home, talk to the buyer, find out what they like and don't like. I've got to provide that financing before they walk in the front door. But I think the agent's the quarterback, and I'm good with that. It's not diminishing my role.
Yeah.
But I think one of the advantages that a consumer can have with a team is that those roles are defined. And I can be the running back, which is just as important. But the customer is the one that has to get the ball. I'm not bigger than the transaction. You're not bigger than the transaction. The customer is the one that's going to score the touchdown. But the great thing about football is you got to have everybody. And I think having a team environment is going to have them benefit.
Yeah, and I would also add that, you know, when this relationship happens often and transactions happen often between partnerships between lender and realtor, they know the plays. Like,
dude,
play
on my metaphor.
Yeah, right.
That was good.
Yeah, so they know the plays, so you can get to the conversation a lot faster.
Yeah,
and really help the consumer win because we have that trust of the end game.
Yeah,
right.
And we know.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I hope you guys understand what we're getting with, and that metaphor wasn't too cheesy, but I never miss an opportunity to bring football or bring metaphor with sports. So that's awesome, man. I like that. Yeah, that's badass. For sure. Let's go to the next topic.
Let's do it. So when you get a new client that comes into play, how do you know what is the best loan option for them?
Man, I'm glad you asked that. The entire basis of my job is based on goals, which is easy to say, but not every client comes to me and says, here's my goals. So I have to listen a lot. Like you said, I've got to ask a lot of questions, the right questions. And it's not all about money. You know, if somebody says, I want my payment to be $1,500, how much of a house is that, right? I have to dig deeper. Where did that number come from? What is their current rent in relationship to that number? Is it lower or higher? Is there an expectation in reality? Does that match? But the basic concept that I'm going to run with is how can I meet that goal? And it's not the consumer's fault or problem if they can't tell me the goal. It's mine. So I got to spend as much time as I need, sometimes an hour or two, an initial consult, to figure out what their goal is. Is it a payment? Is it after the purchase what they want their finances to look like? Or not. Sometimes people are ready. They've been saving 40 grand to buy a house. They're ready to wipe it and then start over. So we got to figure that out. But I think ultimately the quickest answer to your question is I've got to get their goals. The longest answer is how I get that.
Yeah. So when they deliver a response and you spend the time to put it together, how do you know it's the right fit for them?
I ask them. I paint the picture. You know, we talked about a team metaphor before and talking about plays. This is more about a painting, different metaphor. I start to paint that picture and I make sure that that's what they want it to look like. And sometimes when I interpret what they've said to me back on this painting that I'm making metaphorically, it doesn't line up. To give you an example, the money in their account afterwards, when a consumer says, I want to spend 50 grand, they mean all in. But they might say, I want to put 50 grand down.
Yeah.
So I have to help decipher that to make sure it's closing costs, out-of-pocket expenses for inspections, appraisals and credit, and down payment, right? It's got to be everything.
This conversation reminds me of, you know, being a very good active listener. I feel like, you know...
Good theme, right?
Absolutely. You know, we talk a lot in real estate about being relational or transactional, you know, and there are realtors and lenders that will take it more of a transaction, right? We want this to be a bond, a relationship moving forward. We want to make sure they're heard, and, you know, asking layers of asking layers of questions, you know, that lead us to the path of making a decision helps that consumer feel confident about taking that step, right? We want people to feel and this is the most expensive purchase that typically people end up doing. So we want them
most Americans,
we want people to be confident about making those steps. And I can hear, you know, when people are confident or unconfident. And if they're unconfident, I read those cues. And, you know, what could make this, you know, comfortable and confident moving forward? It's delivering it's delivering questions in a way that allows them to see the other perspectives. right?
I think confidence is huge. And I'll also say confidence between us,
Yeah,
right?
true.
The consumer is going to benefit from the fact where if you tell me the area they're looking in, that I know what that means from you. And when I tell you what their budget is, we did a deep dive and that's the answer. There's no gray area there. And I know for me that there's certain agents that I have to instill that confidence in, but when you and I work together, you know, right?
Yeah.
And you have the confidence to know that the lender that is working on their finances is not going to put them in a position they're going to either regret or not be able to be in. And it's the same thing from my end.
Yeah. I mean, we all know when someone's bullshitting us, when something doesn't go the way it's planned. We want to set the expectations up front, how things are going to be, riding along. But when people feel good about the transaction, it's gonna allow us to be that fiduciary, right? It's gonna allow us to open up to them and tell them what's going on.
That's a power word, man.
Yeah.
Tell the audience what being a fiduciary means, because not everybody might know what that means in the context of real estate.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look in the best interest of the transaction for it to close and work, and that's important too. But when you pair that with being an active listener, working for the client and looking out for their best interests, even though it could harm the deal, that's the definition of fiduciary to me, is making sure there is a win for them at the end.
I think the ultimate measure of fiduciary is to tell the customer no.
Yeah.
This house is not in your budget. This loan program does not serve you. This might not be the best decision. I think the confidence that we have in each other, if that scenario arises, I know you'll tell them no.
Well, we want to be comfortable with that conversation. This is a relationship that we're building. This is a conversation that we're having, and painting the picture. What are the options? And talking it out with the consumer is very important, not just from realtor to consumer, but also lender involved as well.
Yeah, and I have another episode that we're talking about the challenges that can come up in a deal. But when you're negotiating a deal, obviously having a relationship between you and I means that I know what your style is, where you can find advantages for your customer, where you advise to stay away from. And in the loan programs, I know you have that confidence in me. But question for you and then for the audience, when you're negotiating a deal, where does it come in for them in a random situation where they're going to need to trust our relationship?
I think it's based on, using, the consumer's emotional intelligence to understand, is that a good guy or a bad guy working on my behalf? Do I trust him? Do I trust him making, sometimes the biggest financial decision of their life? And, it's built upon chemistry. It's built upon confidence. It's built on communication, right? Those sorts of things, but also knowledge of the market, knowledge of situations. And when someone, repeatedly goes, I don't know the answer, or, stutters, or, there are reasons why you might want to pump the brakes, and you might want to talk to someone that actually, that you feel comfortable and confident with making the decision. Because when you're taking that dance into making, moving through the channels of purchasing a property, you want to feel very secure of working with that person.
Right.
You want to feel like I can call them, I can ask them any question. You don't want to feel like I'm bugging them. You want to feel like they're there for me. And that's the relationship we want to have for our consumer, right? It's there for them. But I can keep going and keep going. There's so many layers.
Yeah, there are.
Even in the beginning of is this the right fit for realtor and consumer? Is this the right fit for realtor and lender? And then, if we drive in the beginning, we're typically going to drive all the way through, but getting to the transaction is very important. That's when the rubber meets the road. And we want to make sure, the realtor is looking out for the best interests of the consumer, right? Of client. And, we want to run an analysis on that property. We want to look at the age of the mechanicals, look at the comparables, look at the square footage, look at the roof, right? Look at certain things that could cause an issue during the inspection process of that. Yeah. Also looking at the topography, looking at the bell curve of, or lack of a bell curve of the attrition of that neighborhood, right? So we want to get a sense of, is this a climbing neighborhood? Is it not? Is it stagnant, right? What does that mean? Describing that to the consumer as well.
That's great, man.
And also going in deep for the vision, right? And I'm sure you do this as well. Walk with me on this. How do you paint a vision of making a financial decision with the consumer?
Man, what a great question. I think ultimately using that metaphor of painting a picture, we got to start with the colors, and the colors are the goals, right? When the picture's all done, you're going to have a key in your hand. You're going to walk into your house as a homeowner and go, this is my house, right? I don't want any part of that to be a sigh and say, man, I hope I can afford this, right? On my end, I don't want any question of that. So the colors of the painting goes back into those goals I referred to earlier. We've got to make sure everything's lined up. And the process needs to support those goals, right? If we go into the transaction and the consumer is scared of that payment, that's dangerous. You know, it's dangerous during the transaction of them deciding, you know, they want to back out and they can lose money on deposit, right? Yeah. It's dangerous afterwards if they can't afford it and a couple of years later they have to give the home up. I mean, you know, we always strive to have the perfect experience, but not everybody, you know, can keep their house for 30 years. Sometimes things happen and we can't avoid all of them. But I think painting that picture is really incumbent on us to make sure that we are asking the right questions in the beginning, not to be redundant, and then provide solutions that answer those questions or go after that goal. Which reminds me, you mentioned something earlier that made me think of something. As a lender, I never want my client to think that I don't have a fiduciary responsibility when I'm referring them to loan options. Have you ever had a situation where your customer called you after talking to a lender and said, these are the options I was given. Does this make any sense? Do you think this is a good idea?
I absolutely have. Like it's important to talk through the options, but you know, that shows doubt in having a conversation with that lender. And you know, that also is a shadow of a doubt for me working with that I was
going to ask
with that partner as well. So, you know, when a lender conversation happens with a client, they should feel almost at peace or at whole that they understand everything. And if they don't, you know, they might know the realtor better. And that's, you know, it's sometimes common ground to have.
Spend a lot of time with them.
Yes. And sometimes that's common ground to have that conversation. But usually what happens, they don't ask me that question, you know, because they had a conversation with that lender. Right.
Awesome.
But if they have to talk it through, I'm always here.
But if they ask that question, red flag goes off usually, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I was curious what you'd say about that. Awesome, man. Well, I've got one more topic to talk about, but I really like where we're going with this thing, man. Let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
Cool. All right, man, this last location is absolutely beautiful. We got a running river in the background. It's absolutely beautiful. People come in here and try to find a little gold, and they try to pan for gold.
Yeah, we're moving around.
So in the spirit of, you know, searching for gold, let's talk about actually negotiating the deal, which is the whole crux of this episode. So question for you. I'm the lender, right? So you give me a referral, say, hey, these people want to buy a house. I have a conversation with them about our experience, their goals. We start painting the picture, right? Now, before you go negotiate a sales contract, what do you need from me, the lender? Tell the audience what you need from me to be able to do that.
Yeah, so what I need to figure out is, like, you know, what is their buying power? What type of loan are they going for? How much money can they put down? Is it 10%, 20%? How much deposit can they put down? Is their money liquid, or is it in a 401k? Those sorts of things. Is there multiple people buying the property? You know,
all those things matter in negotiating?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely. So we just want to figure out as much as we possibly can, so we know how to charge forward with the best offer to get that property accepted. Now, if there is not a multiple offer situation, we want to try to get the best deal possible. Now, if it isn't a multiple offer situation, we still want to try to get the best deal possible, but it depends how bad we want the property. So we might have to negotiate differently.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important just knowing what are the options financially that the consumer can do and push up to or push down to make the deal work.
And I'll tell you, I mean, because again, the idea here is to talk about how the consumer benefits from a strong team, right? I can tell you that when we do business together, I know you are a master negotiator. So I know that I need to get all the information from my client that you need to go make that contract. It goes back into the previous segment though, because I'm asking questions about goals. And then when they're answering them, I am trying to figure out a way to reach their goals. But I know you're gonna have to be the one at the table negotiating the deal. Yeah. So I know that information's coming. So I kind of prep my sub list when I'm attacking their goals and being responsible to meet them. I know you're gonna say, hey Joe, what do we have here because you're going to go into the trenches. Because I don't go into the trenches.
Yeah.
You're the one that does that.
So just to add on that, experience really does matter, right? Someone that sells 4 to 5 houses a year is not going to have the experience of someone that sold a lot of real estate. I'm not saying that someone couldn't do a good job that sold 4 to 5.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that someone that has sold many transactions, they're gonna be able to get to the point fast. They're gonna be able to have that wisdom, that experience, and ultimately your side too, right? Working with a newbie lender, they might not know all the different options and all the different packages and styles to stack things or move things or pay off certain debts that raise their credit score, change your credit limit to increase your credit score, things like that, to put you in a different loan package to make your offer more desirable, you know, depending on what market you're in. So it's important. Experience does matter.
That's a lot, man. Like, that's a lot. You're juggling a lot when you go to negotiate. So let me ask you a funny question. So I'm not a lender right now. In this example, I'm a listing agent and I'm trying to sell my seller's house and you give me a call.
Yeah.
We're now negotiating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Well, so, it depends on, I mean, I'm negotiating from the first call.
Yeah.
From the first call. I want to understand, like, you know, what's going on with this house? How many days on the market has it been? What's the interest level been? You know, and I'll be able to tell you by, you know, typically by the pictures and locations if it's priced accordingly.
Days on the market.
Days on the market. And then once I see that property, I'll be able to really tell. And we use a lot of senses, like we're not just visual. We smell for mold, cigarettes, things like that.
Oh, God, it's huge.
Yeah, we really use our ears for traffic and also use our eyes for potential light pollution, you know, depending on what time of day we see it.
Yeah.
Is it near, you know, a city? And maybe someone might already know that it's going to have light pollution, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's near a soccer field that's, you know, 3 acres away, but they don't know until maybe it's lit up at night. So things like that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge, man. So how hard do you fight for somebody after you submit an offer and then you get a counter offer? To explain that experience to me.
I mean, as hard as I have to, right? So
that's a good answer.
I mean, it just really boils down to, like, how much do I have to roll up my sleeves? And sometimes I don't know, you know, who I'm against the other side with. Yeah. To me, like, it's not a battle with them. It's just like, I want to work with them, but I also want my client to really, really win. And what does it mean for them to win? I need to know, how does it work for their loan? How does it work for their offer? And diving in deep to, you know, making sure that listing agent that represents the seller, right? We represent the buyer, making sure they listed the property properly. Not all agents know how to list a property properly. They could be underlisting it. They could be marketing as a fair deal. It could be overlisting.
Tell me the price tag.
Yeah, price tag.
Got it.
Ultimately, you know, did they showcase the property properly? I've had situations where, you know, I've had clients that want to, you know, live close to a school, but the agent might not even list that it's close to a school, right? So I'm able to point those things out to my client to help them understand, you know, what's a benefit to them, right? Things to think about when you're buying a property. How close are the hospitals? How close is entertainment, right? What does the neighbor look like? What does the neighborhood look like? Because you're not just buying the house, you're buying the community.
Dude, I cannot imagine that anybody watching these segments is not learning a lot of information.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate you coming here today. Beautiful location. We got lucky. It was a beautiful day, taking time away from your family. But I think some people are going to learn a lot of stuff, man. I really want to thank you so much for being here today and just explaining that negotiating the deal is going to be better for the consumer if there's a relationship between the lender and the agent.
Absolutely.
It means a lot to me, man. Appreciate you.
Happy to be here.
Hey, let's do it.
See ya.
Guys, thank you so much for being here. The Worldwide Web of Lending is about educating you, having fun, learning some things, having you write down some things, but then smiling afterwards. So I hope you had a really good time. Check out some of my other videos if you have other questions. There are 10 to 12 episodes in this series, but there's some other series and some fun stuff. So thank you so much for being here. Hey, I've got to say it. If you like the video, please like it. Push the like button. It does matter to myself, my agents that are here, helping me out. It means a lot to us. And please subscribe because I'm always going to try to give you some new information. So thank you from Maryland and Jerusalem Mill, Andrew Johns from the Andrew Johns Home Team, Joe Webb, Worldwide Web of Lending with Blevins Home Mortgage. Thank you very much, and we'll see you guys again.